Hi everyone, Callum here from Total Endurance. So just a quick video really to chat you through the Orca range. So wetsuits are a little bit of a minefield. People get confused. Orca have kind of different tiers of wetsuits and people don't usually understand what they're after. So this will hopefully just help you out a little bit. So the current triathlon range from Orca, they have these suits that are called Athletics. So just the way to remember it is Athletics is lower tier. They're still very flexible. They're still buoyant depending on what they're trying to do. But Athletics really just means it's a slightly lower tier wetsuit. The one up is Apex. So the Apex is their premium high quality wetsuit. So that's the easiest way to remember it. Athletics lower tier, Apex higher tier. Within that, they then have three different types of wetsuits. So you get your wetsuits that are all in red, so that's the easiest way to remember it. And these are float wetsuits. So you get the Athletics float and the Apex float. What that means is they're both trying to provide buoyancy, but they both provide different levels of it. So the Athletics float being a lower tier wetsuit, it just has a thicker neoprene panel on the front. Again, the grade in the upper body is a Yamamoto 39, so it's still nice and flexible, but you get suits that are more flexible, and it is very much just an entry level wetsuit. So if you go to so this is the Apex float. So this is just, think of it as the Athletics float's bigger brother. So it's trying to do the same thing, but it's just more and more flexible. So this has got a 40 cell grade in the upper body, which just makes it that bit more flexible than the wetsuit we've just seen. It includes other features, so we have these sort of like ultra thin kind of catch panels, just to give you a bit more sensation of the water. And then they start including significantly more buoyancy. So this aerodome kind of massive panel you see in the front is massively more buoyant than just thicker neoprene. So it's meant to be around 30% more buoyant than just normal neoprene. So the more that we can include, the more it's going to help with our body position. We're going to just literally sit on the surface of the water and not need to try. So massive panel on the front and the back. Which just makes it from Orca one of the most kind of buoyant wetsuits you kind of get from them. So that's the float range. Next we have the complete opposite, where we have the flex range. So as the name suggests, flexibility. These suits are purely focused on being as flexible as they can. So we have the Athletics Flex, i.e. lower tier, and focusing on flexibility. So what that means is the 39 grade that's included in it, rather than it just being in the shoulders, the stitch line here in the stomach, it means the whole upper body, including the chest and the back, is made of this higher quality grade, and it generally means that the freedom of movement of it is significantly better. So that's really cool. What happens, and this is what gets a little bit different, the lower half, it's not as thick and as bulky as what these float suits are. So these include something called neutral buoyancy. Easiest way to think about it, neoprene is buoyant, so it's going to give you some buoyancy, but it's not going to mess with your hips and your legs. So it's not going to try and lift your hips and legs as high in the water as those float suits. It will provide a little bit of buoyancy, but it's neutral buoyancy. And actually what we've found with these type of wetsuits, they're actually very good for breaststroke swimmers as well. So if you do need your hips and legs to be a little bit lower, any of these wetsuits that include neutral buoyancy is actually going to be good for that kind of open water swimmer who's doing kind of multiple strokes as well. So this is the Athletics Flex. And then we have its kind of bigger brother, which is the Apex Flex, although it's a tiny wetsuit. So the Apex Flex is pretty much the most flexible wetsuit that Orca do. So this actually has got a 44 cell grade, which I believe at the moment is the most flexible grade anywhere. So it just means that upper body wise, it's you're not going to find a wetsuit that's got more freedom of movement. It's got like ultra thin kind of panel as well through the whole arms. You can see that it's a little bit almost like paper. So it's just going to give you the most freedom of movement possible. Same deer with the lower half. It's neutral buoyancy, it's not got anything in it that's going to try and lift your hips and legs like the float suit. So that's the Apex Flex. And then we get into these silver suits, and these silver suits here, easiest way to kind of think about it is it's best of both worlds. So we just had your buoyancy wetsuits, we've just had your flex wetsuits, and now we're getting suits that are best of both. So this is the Afflex Flow. So despite it being a lower tier wetsuit, it is still more like a mid-tier, very high quality wetsuit. So it's got this 39 grade all in the upper body, so that stitch line there in the stomach, the whole upper body is made of that really high quality 39 grade, very very flexible. Lower half of it, it's got this aerodome, a bit like what that float suit had in it. So it's got a front panel of aerodome. This is the materials 30% more buoyant, so very very buoyant. Because it is the kind of slightly lower tier version, they've just got the front panel of it, but we've typically found this is probably one of the most popular wetsuits that we sell, just because of how good it is. It feels a lot like a higher tier wetsuit, and the price of it is a little bit more reasonable. And then the last suit, which is the Apex Flow. So this is Orca's top of the range wetsuit. I would really think of it as a flex and a float put together. So it's unbelievably flexible. It's got that 44 cell grade. I personally wouldn't find a wetsuit that's more flexible than this. It's got this ultra thin kind of neoprene panel. It's that 1mm kind of thickness to it. And then the lower half, it's a huge panel of this aerodome. So it starts there kind of on the stitch line of your stomach, and then a massive panel of it on the back. So this is sort of premium wetsuit, as much buoyancy and as much flexibility as you can possibly get. So yeah, hopefully that helped you kind of just explain through the Orca range. It's a little bit confusing, but that's why it's kind of great to come into these shops and we can kind of explain through the differences for you. If you're interested in trying some Orca wetsuits, just give us a shout and we can get you booked in for a wetsuit fitting.